What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my grades and winners and losers from the Broncos-Seahawks trade revolving around Russell Wilson. Let's get into it. Now, before we officially start, I'm actually going to give you a different spiel today. Thank you so much for having us hit 750 subscribers. Started YouTube a little over a year ago, January 2021, and my goal was to hit 1,000 subs by 2 years' time. And we're definitely on a good pace there. This time of year is really kind of my channel because teams have hope and fan bases are excited. So thank you again so much for hitting that milestone. Hopefully we can hit 1,000 very soon. And then my second point that kind of coincides with that. Not going to do combine winners and losers. So sorry if you've been on the lookout for that. Basically look at the raw athletic scores. Those are your winners. But also players who had disappointing combines will have those numbers picked back up at their pro day. So I might do a stock up, stock down thing in the near future once we have some pro day times and we can kind of measure who actually had their stock rise between those two events and then who's actually falling. Is Treylon Burks 40 a concern, et cetera, things like that. So be on the lookout for that in the near future. But I have a full-time job, so I didn't have time to do that right after the combine. So maybe next year. When I'm more in need of content, so to speak, I'll be able to do something like that. So hopefully that would be really exciting. So let's go ahead and jump into this. You see the trade details on your screen. I won't delve into it. Three players for the Seahawks. A handful of picks. Russell Wilson, obviously the best player involved in this deal. You've seen the details. Here are my grades. For the Broncos, right? Once Aaron Rodgers decides he's going to go back to Green Bay, this becomes the next best quarterback available. And Drew Lock's not great. He's not your quarterback of the future. Shelby Harris is into his 30s. He's a good player, but he's into his 30s. No Fant's an interesting tight end. It'll be interesting to see. They have Gerald Everett there. How is Shane Waldron going to balance that out? And what does Noah Fant just in general look like in a Shane Waldron type of offense? But considering the Seahawks kind of had their back against a wall in a lot of ways, are they going to trade Russ? Russ ultimately has the most say in this. Pete Carroll's into his 70s. What do we want to do here? At least they got the picks, and it's one of those things where the players might not wow you right now, but they hit on a couple of these first rounders, then, because they had 2 2s and 2 1s. If they hit on one of the first, one of the second, get really good players out of those spots, we'll look back pretty kindly on this trade for Seattle. Look back to the Khalil Mack and the Raiders Browns trade, or Bears trade, excuse me. Sorry, I can't speak. But look back to that trade, and ultimately, I guess you could say Chicago won because they got the best player in the deal. But had the Raiders hit on a couple of those first rounders, you look at that trade a lot differently. Same thing with the Amari Cooper deal that the Raiders did when they hired John Gruden. So time will have to tell this story, but for right now, I think Seattle did an okay job. They got assets given their situation, and for Denver, again, this was the best quarterback available. Now that roster is looking really nice. Here are some of the winners I have. So, let's start with the obvious ones. The Broncos. This makes a ton of sense. The staff, front office included. George Paton gets their quarterback of the future. John Elway gets, his second Peyton Manning, so to speak. And then Nathaniel Hackett, was hired in large part because of his potential influence on swinging Aaron Rodgers to want to go to Denver or, rekindling that relationship. And, there was, I had mentioned on this channel, he did a lot with Blake Bortles, so maybe the other alternative path was a rookie quarterback. Nah, this was the next best thing. So this is definitely a W for Nathaniel Hackett himself. And then, Russell Wilson, big time winner out of this deal. He goes from a team that was lucky to win, 6-7 games last year. He was banged up during that portion of that time, but that Seattle team is just heading in the wrong direction for what you can do with Russell Wilson. Also, side winner, Bobby Wagner gets released, and now he can kind of go wherever he wants, and that's going to be a really intriguing free agent to watch because he still plays at a high level, maybe into his 30s, but now he's a free agent. He's probably not going to command the $15, $18 million a year that he was having on his contract with Seattle. So the price point might change, and that might allure some teams that are Super Bowl contenders, serious playoff contenders, to want to go out there and sign Bobby Wagner and make a big splash move, and it might be mutually attractive for Bobby Wagner and whoever he signs with. So it's kind of interesting to see that extra chip added to the free agency board. And then the Broncos wide receivers like Jerry Jeudy, when he's healthy, I love Jerry Jeudy. He's my favorite receiver coming out of that class. I did like CeeDee Lamb a lot, but natural ability to separate, that feels like somebody that can get a lot done with Russell Wilson. And then Courtland Sutton, this big downfield vertical threat. I could see some Russell Wilson moon balls go into Courtland Sutton in the near future. KJ Hamler, speedster, can make some big plays down the field and put et cetera. But Javonte Williams, Albert Okwuegbunam, anybody who's a skilled position player just got a big bump in their production next year with Russell Wilson as the quarterback. The NFC West, right? Now the 49ers have one less elite quarterback in that division. It's one less thing for the Cardinals to worry about and the Rams alike. So definitely a win for that division. Maybe Drew Lock, but it's more likely, I think Malik Willis, if he gets to 9, really interesting. I'll have a new mock draft out for you soon. Might be my first 3-rounder. We'll see how comfortable I'm feeling with that. I might stick with the 2-rounder for one more go round, but Lock gets another chance to potentially start, especially if Willis is the pick at 9. That's enticing. I also want to throw out Sam Howell. Sam Howell has a lot of Russell Wilson in him, undersized, can move, strong arm, and say what you will about Sam Howell, what your problems with him may be. His sophomore year at UNC, when he had NFL caliber players around him, dude looked really good, and he was a projected top 2 pick in the next year's draft. Now, obviously, talent departs, and he doesn't look as good, but you throw Sam Howell in a situation where he has DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Noah Fant, that's really interesting, and you can't say he doesn't have weapons around him. But, Lock, another chance to start. Willis, Howell, whoever it is. Rookie quarterback does feel like a pretty solid place for them to land. And Willis and Howell are ultimately the guys that I look at with most upside, but they also have a lot of dual threat ability. And it feels like a way for Pete Carroll or, John Schneider to potentially keep what they have in place. And then, another potential winner here, Derek Carr and the Raiders. Because you look at Russell Wilson coming in that division, and even if you like Derek Carr, you look at that division and you understand he's the 4th best quarterback in that division. And they're probably the 4th best team. And definitely the one with the most holes to patch away at. So because of that, maybe they hired McDaniels because they wanted to see what that and the Carr relationship looked like. But I don't know. You might have to make a strong pivot to what they want to do. And, I think of the Vikings and the Raiders in the same spot because I think they were waiting and seeing what the big name marquee moves and names end up, being moved. So with, Minnesota, it's, are we going to move Kirk Cousins? Okay, well, now that Aaron Rodgers stayed in the division, I think it's a lot more likely that they decide to, hey, let's reset our timetable to win. But if Rodgers left the division, then you keep Kirk Cousins. And the same thing is true for Derek Carr. Hey, if the Broncos don't get anybody and they're trotting out Matt Corral or something like that after taking him at 9, then okay, we have a chance to make the wild card or something like that. But with Russ coming to the division, I think this is a chance for the Raiders to look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, we're the fourth best quarterback pretty objectively. We're the 4th best team pretty objectively. Let's try to reset our winning window. So I think that's potentially in play. And then, QB needy teams with that. Washington just made the move for Carson Wentz, so that's probably off the table. But and I'm not going to grade that just yet. I want to see what the Colts end up doing at quarterback. But, maybe the Colts are not a Derek Carr sweepstakes. Maybe the Steelers. Maybe Seattle. Who knows? Possibilities are kind of endless there. But because Russell Wilson was just dealt, and the Raiders might be forced to move on from Derek Carr, they're going to probably get a pretty penny for him, and kind of helps in that rebuild process. So it's good for the Raiders, good for Derek Carr to potentially get into a nice winning environment and a better division, but it also helps those QB needy teams. And now for the losers, so the AFC West, just kind of what we talked about with the Raiders, that definitely changes their complexion on their playoff chances. The AFC in general, though, right? Because now Russell Wilson's in the mix, and now he's going toe-to-toe with not only Herbert and Mahomes in his division, but Joe Burrow. Lamar Jackson probably going to have a bounce-back season. Whatever Pittsburgh ends up doing. Trevor Lawrence could be surging forward. The Titans are obviously a threat. Like, the AFC just got that much harder, specifically with those first batch of quarterbacks that I named off, and then throw in Trevor Lawrence, because I think he could take a sizable step forward, former number 1 overall pick. You would expect a lot out of him. So, the AFC QB crop just got that much more gnarly, and that's going to make it really, really interesting to see. And once we get to the playoffs, those games, AFC wildcard divisional championship games, are going to be bonkers. And in Seattle, you could put them in the losers here because going from Russell Wilson to Drew Lock is an L. There's just no other way of putting it. And going from Russell Wilson to Sam Howell, Russell Wilson to Malik Willis, that's a step backwards. At least right now. Well, we'll see. I can't tell you what's going to happen in 5 years. I don't have a time machine. So they were kind of pigeonholed into the spot, because Russ ultimately is the decision maker in this position. He could say, hey, no, I'm good to stay in Seattle, and all these trades kind of go by the wayside. But he liked the opportunity, and it sounds like he even didn't want to go to Washington. So that kind of why the Commanders' offer kind of died off. But I think Seattle did ultimately okay. I'm not crazy about the players they got other than Noah Fant. I think that could be interesting, but that's a tight end, low position value. But it's really the draft picks, and it comes down to John Schneider and Pete Carroll if he's sticking around beyond this year to nail those picks, right? Like, you get those picks right, and this trade looks a lot more favorable for you. Other big losers here, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Even if whether it's Locke, Willis, Howell, anybody I've mentioned in this video, they're not going to be as good of a quarterback right away, right now. And, DK Metcalf coming up on a potential contract extension in a year's time. Lockett's a guy on the open market, makes a ton of money, but that value could tarnish a little bit if he's playing with Drew Lock for 17 games next year. So definitely a tough scene for the two of them. But luckily enough, you've been able to see them and what they've done with Russell Wilson to understand that, hey, if they become available via trade or if they get cut or, whatever the case may be, a team's going to say, hey, we have a good quarterback, and those guys are going to be really, really good with them. So ultimately, I think it'll work out, but it is a bit of an L for the two of them right now. Pete Carroll, but maybe not. And, this was supposed to be eye emojis, but I guess that didn't translate to the graphic. But, cool question mark, I guess. But, again, the idea of shopping Kirk Cousins is kind of intriguing now that Aaron Rodgers is just staying in the NFC North. Maybe the Vikings are saying, hey, that was what we wanted to wait and see, and if Rodgers is sticking around, then we are resetting our timetable to potentially win a Super Bowl. We're moving on from Kirk Cousins. We're going to take a quarterback at 12 like Malik Willis or, whatever. That could be a possibility, and I've heard, rumblings of Kirk Cousins in Seattle. Even saw somebody throw it out there, hey, Deshaun Watson. Maybe, we'll see the legal situation there. I've even heard rumblings that Pittsburgh's his top destination. I don't know. There's a lot to speculate on when it comes to Deshaun Watson, but Kirk Cousins gives you a decent floor. I don't think you have quite the upside with Russell Wilson that you would with Kirk Cousins that you would with Russell Wilson, but it definitely is an upgrade over a guy like Drew Lock, and then the production value that you get out of Metcalf and Lockett certainly go up, but. What's that price tag? How much does it cost, right? Because not necessarily the money value, because you're about to pay Russell Wilson a ton, so that's fine, and you cut Bobby Wagner, so you're saving some money there. But draft capital, right? You got the 2 1s, the 2 2s. You're about to package one of the two of those, or potentially both 2 of those 4 pick, whatever, to try to get a Kirk Cousins, because that feels like you only took a half step forward as opposed to a full step forward in a rebuild process. So not crazy about the idea. I just assume Seattle will take their lumps this next year and be buyers in the QB market in 2023. Other QB needy teams, obviously with Russell Wilson taken away, Washington put in a strong offer reportedly. That hurts. A lot of Steelers fans were excited about the potential or the possibility of him coming to play for the Steelers. That's gone by the wayside. Carolina, same thing, et cetera, et cetera. And, the Colts, you can throw them in the mix now. A little unfortunate. And the last loser, sorry, Shelby, but you went from, because there were going to be some veterans moved in this deal, and, maybe it was a different veteran in another, alternate universe or whatever. And Shelby Harris is now playing on one of the best teams in the AFC. But in this reality, he's playing with the Seattle Seahawks, who, again, if they're playing Drew Lock for 17 games or whatever the case may be, if it's not a Kirk Cousins or someone like that, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And they're going to be vying for, top 3 to 5 pick next year. So, Shelby Harris, sorry, man. You dealt with some rough years in Denver, and now you're part of the deal that made the Broncos better, but at your expense. Now you're going to one of the bottom feeders of the NFL in Seattle. But that's going to do it for my grades and winners and losers from the Russell Wilson trade. Tell me what you think down in the comment section. Who do you think won this trade? Who do you think lost this trade? Both team-based, but also individually. Who do you think ultimately benefited the most as a individual? I'd love to have your thoughts down below. Hopefully you'll enjoy today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new around here, want to see more football content, just hit that big red subscribe button. Help us keep growing. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.